Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada Sportsbook.
Think you know what way it's going to go? Make your bet with Sports Interaction. Whether it's hockey, football, or basketball, Sports Interaction has you covered. Bet pregame, live and play, or on one of our many prop bets. Sports Interaction makes it easy to deposit, play, and cash out. Join now and see all that sports betting has to offer. Want to bet? Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. That's sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. 19 plus, please play responsibly. Leaf fans, welcome back to Game Over Toronto. I hope you are having a warm Wednesday after today's weather, and I hope you are warmed in the heart by that late overtime goal by Mitch Marner over the New York Rangers after a fantastic A-plus quality hockey game. We are Game Over Toronto. I am Lauren. This is my very good friend Armaan, and we have a very special guest for you on tonight in just a few minutes. Adam Herman is waiting right below us, but you just can't see him yet. Welcome to Game Over Toronto. Please make sure you hit like and subscribe before we get going on tonight's game. What a game, Armaan. What a game.
Yeah, that was a fun one. Electrifying. It's always fun playing the Rangers. I think it was a bit of a goalie duel, but still exciting. A lot of chances.
It was, and I really didn't think with all those flurries that were happening in front of the Rangers goal, I didn't know if they were going to actually get one past Shesterkin, and I'm so glad that they did, and I'm so glad that you are here to talk about it with us, our friends. Welcome, everybody. So let's get our guest in here. Let's get talking to our very good friend, Adam Herman. Armaan, introduce Adam.
Adam Herman is a hockey content creator at the Bleacher Report. He's a Rangers guy, so we're definitely going to be touching on a few Rangers guys here. So especially Vesey and I think Ben Harpur, a few ex-Leafs on the team. But welcome, Adam Herman.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
It's great to have you. And as a Rangers fan, in that last 5 minutes, what are you thinking? Are you thinking we're just going to close this out and it's going to be great?
I'm actually kind of not a fun person to watch sports with because I'm very like in the moment, like blinders on, just like analytical thinker. So visually, you wouldn't have really seen me like any different than if I was like waiting for the train or something. But like for sure, like I went into hyper focus mode in my head. A lot of scrambles at both ends, and especially like that last minute, I thought like, oh, Toronto really might, put this one away.
Well, and Chytil starting off the game for you guys in the second, I believe you said you tweeted out that it was a career high 15th goal for him, 15th goal of the season.
Yeah. It's interesting because this is now his 5th full season in the NHL, and he played, I think 9 games as an 18-year-old, so 6 seasons if you want to go that way, so it feels like Rangers fans have been waiting forever for him to take off, but, he's still, I believe, 23 years old, so he's still a young guy. It's not that surprising that it took him some time, but in previous seasons he would have 5 really good games followed by becoming a little bit invisible in the next few, which is fine. But like it seems this season he's finally putting it all together, and at many moments has been the best player on the team.
Yeah, young guy on a young line too. He's centering, or is he? He's centering Lafreniere and Kako. So
yeah,
and I thought that was their best line throughout the entire game.
No, absolutely. And, we saw that in the playoffs too, especially in this series against the Lightning. Everyone loves to talk about the playoffs, like, veterans and experience and guys who know how to, like, what it takes. But it was those 3 kids. They're called the kids line, or people are starting to call them now the boys to men line, which is pretty funny.
That's amazing. What a fantastic name.
Yeah, but point being, like, they're pretty fearless. And, on their own, they've had some struggles individually, but for whatever reasons, once they're together, they're just magic. They cycle the puck very well. They make great passing combinations and seem to have like intuitive knowledge of where each is going to be and where they're going on the ice. I think they're as good as any line the Rangers, can put together and have put together.
Well, and
and I thought that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry,
no,
Lauren.
please, Armaan, please take it off.
No, I was just gonna say that I thought the Rangers top line and also the Leafs top line kind of struggled tonight. Especially like Kreider, he had a pretty bad look in terms of the defensive end on that Liljegren goal. So, yeah, it's just interesting to see, like you look at the top end talent on both teams and you expect those guys to kind of pop off. And for us, Pontus Holmberg, a 4th liner, and Timothy Liljegren were our two goal scorers in regulation.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, you don't want your top guys to play poorly. and Kreider's had some struggles this year, but at the same time, like over 82 games, there's not a single player in the league who's not going to have a bad one or two, right?
Yeah.
And so like that's what it takes in the playoffs. Like, is that every playoff team has 2 or 3 really good players, and it just kind of comes down to whose third line can get that extra goal in the third period, right? Or which number 5 defenseman's gonna make that one play in the defensive zone. And so I think you look at the Rangers and the Leafs. I think both teams do need to add at the deadline for sure.
Oh yeah.
Not to jump way too far ahead, but both teams do have depth issues to some extent, but they also have a lot of players down the lineup who can, kind of chip in when the top guys aren't getting it done, and that's what you need.
Yeah.
Well, and
I was curious.
They were saying on the broadcast that the Leafs' third and fourth lines haven't scored in like 10 games or something ridiculous, right? Like it hasn't been producing well, and Holmberg got lucky tonight. But aside from that, we haven't been scoring on our third and fourth lines, which is what you need in the playoffs. And we only have 16 goals by our defense, which is 29th in the league, right?
Yeah.
And that's not something that is going to go far in the playoffs.
No. Go ahead.
On the broadcast, also, just to add to that, like after the Holmberg goal, I think we went shotless from our bottom 6 for like a solid 20, 30 minutes of game time. Like,
yeah.
That's not very good, but also it's a new look for our bottom 6. I think with Anderson in instead of Zach Aston Reese, I kind of like to see the youth in there a little more in the bottom 6. So it's just after the goal, our bottom 6 kind of struggled to generate stuff.
Yeah, I think it is what it is for now, and like I think the good thing for the Leafs is that for better or worse, their playoff situation's more or less kind of determined at this point. So, they're not living and dying by every game right now, So, like I said, the reinforcements are coming. The Robertson injury hurts, obviously, but, a trade will be made. Maybe if he's not moved, Matthew Neese comes in and plays a depth role in the playoffs, right? So I think it's a matter of when and not if, Dubas, brings in the reinforcements. So it's frustrating to watch in January, maybe. Certainly not helpful, but I think, as the Leafs fans are aware of as anyone else, like what matters is what you look like in April.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So, they're fine for now,
Yeah, I was actually curious because I was watching and I saw VC kind of jump across lines. He was on the Panarin line for a bit, and then he was on the Gaudreau line. What line is he usually does he usually start on?
Yeah, it's he's played up and down the lineup, and it's not even about him per se, but just he kind of just fits in wherever they need him. It's definitely not ideal to have him in a top 6 role, maybe even not top 9. Ideally, he's on the 4th line. Definitely not top 6. But, like I was talking about with the Leafs, the Rangers have an issue right now on right wing. It's going to get dealt with at the deadline. For now, it's not so great. The good thing with him is that, he's playing really well defensively right now, and he can chip in some goals in the net front. So, he's not an ideal top 6 winger, but he's not going to drag the line down either. And I think with the Rangers' talent, he's on a line with Panarin and Zibanejad. Like, they don't need him to carry the line, right? They just need him to do his job, fill in the spot, the gaps where they're not, play a solid game. And, at least tonight, I think he did that job well enough.
Yeah, like the most notable thing that Leaf fans know from him is when in All or Nothing, Keefe called him vanilla. And then, the very first game he plays against us earlier this year, he absolutely destroys us. And he's putting up good defensive numbers. It's good for him, honestly. I think he finally found his game, after a few years in the league and moving around a lot too. So, yeah, good to see a resurgence for him.
It's very surprising. And it takes a lot of humility on his end because, he was a Hobey Baker winner. He came in as a top prospect. Even in his rookie year, he scored about 17 goals. So, everyone thought this is the guy's future. He's going to be a big goal scorer. And it didn't work out because he just kind of lacked the speed and kind of the total game to be a consistent offensive contributor. He found that out in Buffalo and then Toronto and Vancouver and New Jersey. And, something clicked in his head, and that's a credit to him that he completely transformed his game. And, now he's become just a really brilliant, depth defensive winger.
Yeah, his production hasn't really increased that much. I think he's up to like 16 points so far, but it's really the defensive metrics that we've seen like kind of shoot up. Like on Toronto, I remember his defensive metrics, and they weren't like
nothing to write
for a
home
bottom
about
6 or a top 6 role. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
no,
he
absolutely
just didn't have a spot on the lineup. So yeah, it's definitely good to see him kind of develop his game to keep a role in the NHL. The other guy I actually wanted to talk about briefly is Ben Harpur, because when the Rangers signed him, I wasn't really expecting him to be on the roster. I was expecting him to go to Hartford. Like, have you noticed him at all, or is he kind of just in the background? Because he's playing on a pairing with Schneider, which, it's a pretty important pairing, with but he seems like
I completely forgot he played for the Leafs. That feels like, that was a rough era.
It's okay. I forgot he played for the Rangers now, so we're even. It's cool.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Rangers have had a huge issue at left defense for their third pairing. They tried a few, younger players there, Weber, Hayek, Zach Jones, and it hasn't worked out. They need someone. Harpur would not have been my choice by any measure. I think he's played more or less what you would expect. He throws some big hits, but, he's not good on the puck, not a good skater. So he's been pretty leaky, although he did score a goal against the Flyers, so credit to him for that. He hasn't been absolutely horrific by any means. So it could be worse, but for sure, he's not the answer on left defense, especially for when he's paired with a young player like Schneider, who's going to need some help there. So, I think everyone kind of knows that a trade is coming there as well.
Yeah. I remember Jack Hahn, who is an old Marlies coach, tweeted something when he signed with the Rangers, and it was like Harpur shared a story with him when he was on the Marlies, and it was back in his Ottawa days. He stayed on after a morning skate to work on stick handling, and then a coach came out and told him to get off the ice because they don't want him touching the puck. It's just that's brutal.
Yeah, I mean, look, especially from your depth defenseman, right? You don't need them to score 15 goals or anything, but it's like Justin Holl, all right, he can move the puck, you know what I mean? He can make a D-to-D pass. That's what you want from a third pairing defenseman of that, kind. And just
2 legs and a beating heart, right?
Passes.
2 legs and a beating heart.
Yeah, and it's he tries really hard. He puts it all out there. And by all accounts, he seems like a really good dude. So it's nothing personal, of course, but the Rangers are all in on a Stanley Cup, and he's not the one you want out there in a game 6, defending a lead.
Yeah. So in terms of the Rangers' priorities in terms of the trade deadline, are you looking at that top or the left D position or top 6 left wing more? Because we're sort of in the same spot in terms of Leafs media, kind of, we're in on Gavrikov, but we're also talking about how Yarncroke's in the top 6.
Yeah. So the one advantage I think the Rangers have over the Leafs in that regard is that, depending on how things play out, they're estimated to have somewhere between $7.5 and $9 million in cap space at the deadline. So it doesn't have to be an either or. They can do whatever they want, as long as the price is right. But that being said, I don't know.
I mean, at least you don't have to trade for a goalie, right?
Yeah,
that's very
not part of the conversation for you.
if they have to trade for a goalie at any point, it's already over.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think this is a lame cop-out answer, but I think part of it's going to depend on you've got 5 or 6 weeks until the deadline. So I would want to see what Lafreniere does the next few weeks. I would want to see what Kakko does the next few weeks. And I think that would, kind of influence it a lot because if, one of those guys really takes off, then it's all right, they can survive, with those guys in the top 6. Whereas, if it's still kind of inconsistent and they're not getting the secondary scoring, that might be the priority. But I have a really hard time believing they can win, they can make a really deep playoff run without a legitimate third pairing, because in the playoffs, everyone there's 4 good lines, 3 good pairings on every team. You can't hide players. Games can go into, double overtime when everyone has to get shifts. So I guess I would pick the third pairing, left defenseman.
And do you think Lafreniere or Kakko would be available if it meant getting someone like Timo Meier or, one of these big names like Horvat?
I was going to say, outside of Shesterkin, what are your off limits? Is there anything where you're you can't have
I'll
that?
tell you what mine are. I mean, the cliche is if Gretzky got traded, then anyone can get traded. But, pragmatically, Shesterkin's off the table. Adam Fox is off the table. Zibanejad's not going anywhere. Panarin's not going anywhere, if only because of logistics. Country Miller, it would take something that's not going to happen for him to move. You know, and given how he's playing, I doubt Chytil's going anywhere. I could be forgetting someone, but point being, in terms of Lafreniere, Kako, I don't see happening just because he's playing so well and he's under contract already through next season at an affordable cap hit. Lafreniere is a free agent at the end of the season, and clearly it's been a bit turbulent with him. He's not getting traded just to be traded. Like, it's not happening for a rental like Horvat. For Meyer, if the money works for them long term, you hope Lafreniere turns into a player like Timo Meyer, right?
Yeah.
And they're trying to win right now. And he's a maybe if he gets there, Lafreniere. So if they could fit him under the cap long term, he's the kind of guy you kind of do it for. The kind of guy where it's like, all right, he's not just here for one run and done. Like, he can be a part of, 2, 3, 4, Stanley Cup runs going forward. So, is he untouchable? No, I don't think so. But the Rangers definitely aren't shopping him right now, and it would take something really compelling for them to move him.
Yeah, I think Meyer's the top get for a forward right now, especially because he's an RFA. Even though that qualifying offer is something like 10 million, so for a lot of teams to fit him in, they're gonna have to figure out an extension before he's traded or something like that.
Right. Yeah, and that's the problem. I don't think the Rangers or many teams would just acquire him blind like that.
Yeah.
Certainly even if a contract's not agreed upon, there'd have to be some preliminary kind of concept of what a contract would look like long term. If he would be hell-bent on the 10 million, if he would, take a lower number for term for the right fit. So yeah, I mean, the Rangers are definitely going to, if nothing else, look into him just as due diligence. And especially if Kane's not available because of injury. So yeah, he's the kind of guy, if you're going to move Lafreniere, and I don't think they'd even do it regardless, but if he's going to get moved, that's what it's going to be. It's the guy who's a superstar, that can be part of a run for multiple seasons.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, let's get.
Are the Rangers?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are the Rangers willing to part with their first rounder this year?
So they actually have two. They traded Nils Lundqvist, former first-round pick, to Dallas because he wanted out because there was just no space for him. At least that's as the Rangers saw things.
He was also
Allegedly
healthy scratch today.
What's that?
Nils Lundqvist. He was healthy scratch today on the Stars.
Was he?
Yeah,
he started the season very well. He's a very good player. I think he can be a good player in the NHL. But, I digress. They have 2 first-round picks. I'd be very surprised. If they don't move it, it's because they didn't have to.
At least one.
They wanted.
At least one,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You have two.
So, yes, it's like I said, if they don't move it, it's because they got what they wanted for a second-round pick and, and a prospect or whatever. But Drury, by no means, this team, for better or worse, they are planning to win now and now. So if he has, if he's identified his player, a first round pick is not going to be what stops him from acquiring that player. So yeah, the Rangers are going to be, if not all in, they're going for it this season.
What'd you think of Chytil's first goal? That cheeky off the face-off.
Yeah, I was
looking down at my phone.
NHL 23 goal. I didn't think they scored those in real life.
That before. It's a new one from him. He I'm not obviously it's shocking to watch live, but he's a very skilled player in a sneaky way. He's, even when he was 18 years old and, preseason and, when he played in the AHL, he's always been very clever with the puck on his stick and has a quick release. So yeah, I mean, it caught me off guard for sure, but it makes sense. He's a very talented player. He doesn't have kind of I guess the social cachet, does the public, reputation of a star player or anything, but he's been playing a second line center all season. He's a very skilled player. So he definitely has those kinds of plays in his toolkit.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think the story of this game, the 2 stars would be the goalies, because Shesterkin and Samsonov both were dialed in today. Aside from the first goal or the first shot on net that Shesterkin faced, which was, it's a backhand. It's hard to read, and Pontus Holmberg placed it so perfectly.
We were all surprised by that
shot.
goal. We were all surprised by that goal.
That was a really nice play. Joey Anderson, even on the neutral zone boards, with that transition pass. And yeah, I didn't know Pontus Holmberg had that backhand in him.
No,
that's the first time I've seen that.
It was a clever play. It was also against the Rangers' fourth line, which is a bit makeshift right now. But yeah for sure.
Aside from that, Shesterkin was excellent. I mean,
it's interesting. I understand why, but there's been a lot of panic about the Leafs goaltending situation. And, you know, obviously they don't have a Shesterkin or Vasilevsky, you know, or even like I don't know, you know, a Spencer Knight, you know, like,
Yeah.
or you know, and Frederick Anderson anymore. But like those, you know, between Murray and Samsonov, like I think you can find the guy who gets you there, kind of like when it was Murray and Fleury in Pittsburgh, where they were kind of in and out, or, you know, Leonard and Fleury in Vegas. Um, you know, Samsonov I thought was a great addition because he's a talented player. It didn't work out in Washington, obviously, but, you know, the talent's there. And I would take the upside over, you know, some backup where he's a veteran and he's experienced, but you know you're going to get poor performance.
I will.
So I thought
I will take.
Go
I will
ahead.
take Ilya Samsonov over Michael Hutchinson every time.
You're
Every
right,
time.
yes, exactly.
Only
So,
1.8
yeah.
mil is on the cap hit as well.
No,
Samsonov,
exactly. I
a
I
low
thought
risk move.
Dubas did about as well as he could have in the offseason, given just a very, you know, bizarre goaltending market. Certainly better than what, you know, he could have done with Jack Campbell, right? So
100%.
I think the Leafs are, you know, not great, but I think they're okay in net for now.
I feel the need to agree. Like it's a little bit dicey, but any market that you go to, they're gonna say there's a problem with the goaltending, right? Even Vasilevsky was like hasn't been playing super well. Someone threw a Lightning jersey on the ice the other day, guys.
That was so stupid.
Like,
That was so stupid.
come on, pull back down to earth here, kids. And you know, even I'm sure that there's games for you, Adam, where you're watching and you're like, Igor, buddy.
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
of course, like that's goaltending. Like you can't, like as a goaltender, you can't hide, right?
No.
Like if you know, like tonight, like
And no
you
one
know,
has a career 1.0 save percentage, right? Like
no, exactly. But it's like, you know, if Matthews has a poor game, you know, like it's not great, but all right, there's Tavares, there's Nylander. Like if you're a goaltender, you have a poor game, like that's it. Like the puck's going in the net, your team's losing.
Yeah.
So there's nowhere to hide. Yeah, of course, every goaltender is gonna have a good game, a bad game, a good week, a bad week. You know, and I think the Toronto's goaltenders are definitely capable of both radical ends of that spectrum, but you know, like I said, the good news for them is that both of them have upside and they can turn to the other one, you know, and hope that they capture lightning in a bottle with one of them at any time. So I think they're okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like when Murray was struggling, you know, the past couple of weeks, Samsonov has kind of come in and stolen the, you know, the starting netminder position because I think he started 4 in a row now since he went in relief of Murray when he was pulled 5 games ago, and he's 14-0-1 at home, which is ridiculous. Like that's no one really expected that coming into it. So yeah, I've been very pleasantly surprised by the Leafs goaltending, and it's another good performance from him today. I thought he kept us in it.
definitely not as steady as Samsonov as Shesterkin, right? Like the number of flurries that happen in front of the Rangers net where they're showing the replay and Shesterkin's legs are going like pinball flippers, like boom 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 boom. I was like, I didn't even know somebody could move their legs that fast in those directions. Yeah. Like just ridiculousness. And even though he's not like a huge goalie like Vasilevsky, he plays so fast and so well that it just completely makes up for all of the vertical difference, right? And
yeah, you know, he's about the same height as Lundqvist too. Lundqvist is 6'1", and you know that was the thing. The Rangers goaltending coach Benoit Allaire, those are the goalies he wants to work with. He wants to work with the undersized guys. He also did it with Antti Raanta, because he knows how to get them to compensate for the lack of height by, you know, staying on their skates, which, as you mentioned, what that allows them to do is be quick, because if you drop down to your knees on the butterfly, you're out of, you know, that's where you are. If there's a rebound, the puck goes a different direction. With Shesterkin, that's exactly right. It's, you know, he almost uses his, you know, his smaller stature to his advantage because he plays deep in the net, and he's able to just move around the crease so quickly. So that's when you see a lot of, like you said, those scrambles in front where you're like, all right, then that's probably going to be open here, but he's able to get across the crease so quickly, right? Or he's able to get the pads down very quickly. So you're absolutely right. Like that's definitely his game, is to, you know, play, you know, be faster rather than, you know, bigger.
Yeah, how good are I was just curious, how good are the Rangers at 3-on-3?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't have the specific numbers up in my head right now, but I think to some degree, I imagine the Leafs are very good at it. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but you
You'd
just look at
think
the
so, but we've been
I
bad.
that's
Why
what I'm
that's why I
saying. You
asked.
look at the talent, right? But
Yeah,
it's just like
exactly.
you shoot the puck, it goes just wide. The puck ricochets around. Now the other team is a 2-on-1, right? Like it's
Yeah.
especially in small samples. Like I would imagine, like if you did a 60-minute game at 3-on-3, like the Leafs would dominate, right? Like Matthews and Marner and Nylander, like they'd all go off. But in a 5-minute span, anything can kind of happen. So I don't know the exact numbers, but for sure, like Zibanejad scored a number of goals, Kreider scored a number of goals, Fox has scored a number of goals, Panarin's had a few. That's kind of the beauty of 3-on-3 for the Rangers, at least. It's number one, Shesterkin's the guy you want in goal on a 2-on-1 or breakaway, but also, the Rangers are very top heavy in terms of, the offense. So they have the players that they can just rotate Panarin, Kreider, Kakko.
Yeah.
So at least in theory, they're pretty well set for it.
Yeah, but I don't think anyone was stopping Mitch there. That was a beautiful, beautiful
great
effort.
move. That's why, obviously some players did not play for the Rangers. You want to correct some things, but it's a close game, and like a superstar just makes one great move to, end it in overtime. So, that's why they pay him, much to the chagrin of some of the, curmudgeons in the media,
The uncles of the media.
Wendell Clark or whatever. But yeah, that's why he gets paid, what is it, 10 million? Because he's a superstar who can make individual plays like that. And that was just the difference tonight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, it was a great game overall.
And it's underrated people that get us to overtime, right? Like, Pontus Holmer gets us on the board, and then Filip Chytil gets 2 goals, almost gets a hat trick multiple times tonight.
God, he was close
which
a lot of times.
I thought for sure. I was like, oh, he hasn't got one before? Here it comes. Here it comes.
I was so sure when he came out of the penalty box. Trocheck nearly hit him with that breakaway pass.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I mean. There's those plays. Kreider missed a tap in on the back door on the power play, but on the other hand, Shesterkin made some great saves. And then was it Tavares that hit the crossbar with 2 seconds left? Yeah. So like it could have gone either way. Yeah. Like just one bounce in either direction, and that's kind of how it went. And like I said, Marner made a great play as a superstar. That if this was a playoff series and it went to game 2, it could have been Zibanejad or Panarin who came up with a great play in overtime that made the difference. So I think it's a game that both teams, even if it was imperfect, I think they can be pretty content with as they move forward in the season and can say, okay, like that's the type of game that can get us through like a best of 7 playoff series against a good team.
Yeah, it definitely like feels like this would be an amazing playoff series just with the amount of talent that's on display here. Like I know they both teams I think have question marks within their roster. I was actually curious, like, when we look at the Rangers last year, which was sort of an advanced stats sort of nightmare that was being carried by Shesterkin.
Very polarizing.
Do you feel it's the same this year, or has there been improvements that you've noticed in the back end? And like, do you feel confident going into the playoffs?
So ironically, they were like top 5 by like possession driven best metrics, like expected goals, like in the first like 6 weeks of the season, and they just weren't winning. In part, like they lead the league in post hit, which Chytil now added to, and then Shesterkin and Halak did not start the season well, but otherwise, plus the power play struggled, but otherwise, like they were playing very well. They just weren't getting the results, and then their play dipped, but they did start to get results, which is just, that seems to be how it goes for them. Last season it was real tough. Like you said, it was Fox in the power play, Panarin, Shesterkin obviously carrying the team when they didn't even honestly deserve to make the playoffs on like the whole product. But it also did change at the deadline once they added Frank Vetrano and Andrew Kopp, and they became a more complete team, and the numbers became a lot more favorable to them, even in the playoffs against Tampa and Pittsburgh. And I think it's going to be a similar thing this season. It's going to come down to what players they add at the deadline and how, are those going to be difference makers? Are they going to add the top 6 right winger that they need so that, they're not sending Jimmy Vesey up there to play above his means, I think they're in a better position. Even if they made the conference final last season, I think they're in a better position this season on merits because, the young kids, as you saw tonight, Lafreniere, Kakko, Chytil, Keandre Miller. Like they're more ready because they're a year older, they're a year stronger, they're a year smarter. They've been through a playoff run before. So so there's that. They have a little bit more depth this season, at least compared to last season pre-deadline. So yeah, I think once the additions are made, and it's definitely a when, not if. I think they might not be a tier 1 contender, but I think you'll look at them as a team that, all right, like if their talent does what they're supposed to do, Shesterkin steals a game or two, like sure, why not? They could do it.
I mean, listen, the Rangers have a Norris Trophy winner and a Vezina Trophy winner on the same team. And I watched a couple of Rangers games last year, and I've watched a couple this year, and they're playing with more confidence. Their forecheck tonight was unbelievable, and they just don't give you any room. And I don't envy whoever faces you guys in the first round when you make the playoffs. I really don't. And I think if the Leafs were to face the Rangers in like the Eastern Conference Final, if they were to get there, it would be such an unbelievable tight series, because I think there are some things that mirror each other's teams so close. Obviously, there's big differences, right? Like you said, the big, huge difference in consistency in our goalie, for example. But I think it would be a fantastic series. Like, it would be heart-wrenching and terrifying, and I'm sure you'd still be cool as a cucumber on the inside. But, it would be a great series, and 7 games of that would be stressful, but, like, man, what kind of hockey would you get if you had both teams firing on all cylinders like they did tonight? My goodness.
I mean, if we do get a playoff series together, I think that would mean that both of us made the Eastern Conference Finals, which I will take.
Well, yeah.
Sure.
Please.
Yeah, well,
I just casually slide that in there. Do you like that? I was like, yeah. When we see you in the conference final, like, no big deal.
Yeah, like, obviously both are good teams, but there's some good teams that are kind of boring to watch, or even like their top players are effective but boring. With the Leafs and Rangers, like, it's not just that, they're good players, but they're, for the most part, exciting to watch. Maybe not so much Tavares, although he's very good and skilled, but, like, he doesn't have that wow factor of, like, a Matthews or Nylander or Marner, right?
Yeah.
Or Adam Fox or Panarin. And,
I
just look at that series.
Right?
Yeah, and I just look at that kind of series where, Morgan Rielly in the back end, there's a lot of talent there. Like, that's a series that if it goes 6 or 7 games, like, sells the sport to the casual fan, right? That's how I see it, at least.
Well, and weirdly enough, like, it's been a long time since the Leafs played the Rangers in the playoffs, and it's funny because, like, people our age, for the most part, like, Leaf fans and Rangers fans, we don't really have any beef. Like, there's lots of original 6 teams where, like, Habs, Bruins, and Leafs, there's like a trifecta of hate, right? Where everybody hates each other. But there's not a lot of, like, beef between the Rangers and the Leafs.
No, not much that I can think of, but, once there's a playoff series, all bets are off.
I just don't have a reason to hate you yet.
I was actually curious.
Of course.
I was curious because you said the last, like, it's been a long time. It's 1971. That's crazy.
A long time.
Yeah, that's actually longer than I thought, but I knew I knew it was decades. Like, I think most Rangers fans, if you asked them for an association with the Leafs, it would just be that Brian Leetch was traded to the Leafs in 2004. And, like,
2004, that run.
It's not a reason to hate the Leafs because, as I remember it, most Rangers fans were cheering for the Leafs at that point. But it's definitely just kind of an uncomfortable sight to see him, in a Leafs jersey. I imagine similar to, like, Sundin in Vancouver a little bit. So that's all there is. But I don't think it would be called beef per se. But I don't doubt it wouldn't take long for it.
I mean,
halfway
we do
through
have
game
something
1.
in common in that we both probably don't like the Islanders. We've developed beef with them over the past couple of years. That's for sure.
Yeah. That's fair enough.
It's more that they have beef with us. We don't really beef with them.
Dear John.
That seems to be how it goes. I know I'm gonna get yelled at for this, whatever. But, like, it's definitely disproportionate. I think Islanders fans hate the Rangers more than Rangers fans hate the Islanders because the Rangers just need to spread the hate between them and the Flyers and the Devils. So for sure, it's that way.
It's the end game. You ruined my life. I don't even know who you are.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. I mean, obviously, it's a big rival, maybe the biggest for the Rangers, but it's just one of many for Rangers fans, whereas the Rangers are kind of like everything that Islanders fans despise.
Yeah, for sure. And a few months ago, you did the Bleacher Report, the top 32 draft picks, and you ranked them. And obviously, the top number one spot is undebatable, right? Connor Bedard's going first overall.
Yeah.
So I have two questions. One, well, it's a 1A and 1B, and then a 2. Where do you think he's going to go, and where do you want him to go? And has anything in the top 10 changed for you after the World Juniors?
Where do I think Bedard's gonna go?
Where do you want him to go? You get to wave a magic wand. Other than New York, you can't say that.
Not the East.
You can't pick yourself.
I mean, I'm probably gonna think of a better answer in 10 minutes. Damn, but I don't know. I feel like Columbus, because I feel like obviously they landed Gaudreau recently, but they just haven't really had a chance to be a good NHL team for a while.
Aren't they one of the only teams that has never had a first overall pick?
Well, they had Rick Nash, but that was 2002.
Right.
It's been a long time. Look at that era during the Torts years where they beat Tampa and Bobrovsky leaves, Panarin leaves, Matt Duchene leaves, and they're building some young talent there, and I feel like that would just be nice for them to, the fans who've been waiting for a long time for a legitimately good team and something to feel confident in and proud in. I think that would be nice, at least more. That's so than
a nice answer.
More so if Chicago got him after just a very cynical approach to this, right? Or Vancouver, they certainly haven't earned it,
They don't need more things to mess up. They don't need more things to mess up right now.
So, and I would hate, on one hand, Arizona's another team. They haven't had, I don't even think a top 2 pick ever. But so in the other circumstances, they would have been my choice. But with that arena situation and we can't have the best player in the league, maybe, or at least second best playing in a college rink. So I'll go with Columbus.
I'd be okay with San Jose or Anaheim as well.
Yeah, San Jose and Anaheim would be fine. I'd have no qualms there. Anaheim and San Jose are other teams where they're kind of doing this.
Just please
not.
San Jose needs something to love. Honestly,
yeah,
they
sure,
need some.
yes.
They need some good.
To be fair, they had 25 solid years.
Yeah. They did have some good years for sure. So I wouldn't have a problem with either of those two teams either.
Good answer.
But yeah, definitely not Montreal. Definitely not Ottawa.
No.
Keep them
Let's
out of the
just
Canadian
say.
East.
Let's keep them west of Chicago. And south of North Carolina. Actually, let's keep them west of Louisiana too. Let's get that in there. Let's just everything on the Eastern Seaboard. Let's just not. That would be great.
Yeah, fair enough.
Except Columbus, the teeny tiny little pocket of Ohio. They can have it. That's it. Oh, I don't want to deal with. Do you want to deal with? Do you want to deal with Habs fans if they get Connor Bedard? Adam, come on.
I mean, the thing with that, it's gonna be way worse for you guys. For me, my thing on it is that no matter what happens, Habs fans are gonna be Habs fans. I don't think no matter what they do,
no one's perfect.
Whoever they draft is gonna be hyped up, and it's gonna be a disaster if he doesn't perform on game 1, and they're gonna be bragging. I mean, it's. I love Montreal. I love the city, and the fans are very passionate. But we know how this is going to go, no matter what. So from my perspective, at least, it's they're going to be annoying regardless. So
fair enough.
As for your question about how things have changed in the top 10, I'm going to be publishing my second version of the rankings, and I believe we're looking for post deadline, so maybe mid-March. Yeah, it's tough because it's just such a talented group. And then with Matvei Mishkov, I would put him as the second best player in the draft. The problem is, he's Russian, which is a bit of an issue right now, just logistically, if not for optics. But he's signed in the KHL, I think, for the 3 seasons following the draft. And so, if you're a GM where you're looking at all right, if I don't have this team going in 2 or 3 years, I'm fired, right? You don't care if Mishkov is a superstar in 5 or 6 years, because you're not going to be around to see him, which is why I think he could fall in the draft. Another guy that's moving up is Leo Carlson, center from Sweden. I can't remember exactly where I had him. Definitely top 10, but he's arguably the third. He could go third overall. This upcoming year, very skilled center, plays a really good game. I need to go through my list, figure some things out, move some pieces around for sure, because a lot has changed. But I do know, it's called the Bedard sweepstakes, and of course, like that's a game changer. He's the guy you want, but
we don't tank in the NHL, right? So
of course not. No,
those
never.
comments.
But like even if you land, I think it's kind of like the 2015 draft, right, where Leafs fans wanted McDavid. They end up fourth overall instead. Was it? Or fifth overall,
It was fourth.
And they land. They get Mitch Marner. He's not McDavid, but like that's a superstar, right? I think this is going to be kind of like that, where it's like you might get an Eichel instead, or a Marner instead, or a Mikko Rantanen instead. So I think you're going to get a lot of tanking, not just for Bedard, but because no matter what, you're landing a great play. I think there are probably at least 4 players, maybe even 5, that I would have taken first overall in both of the previous 2 drafts available in this upcoming draft. So that's why you're seeing teams not tanking.
Yeah. Like I think just the top 4 with Michkov, Fantilli, and Carlson on top of Bedard, like that's just crazy stacked as a draft class for like a top 5.
This is one that scouts have been talking about for years, and no, it's no coincidence. It's no coincidence that the disparity between the good and bad teams this year is, bigger than usual. Like teams have been preparing for this draft, a year or 2 in advance. So
that's just us as fans projecting, obviously.
And for some reason, Vancouver still wants to,
they're in
win.
the chase.
Yeah, they're still like, we can do this.
They got goalied by Peter Mrazek tonight.
No, that was yesterday. But,
was it? Okay.
And no, they lost.
Kaya mentioned that yesterday.
Vancouver won at the end. Yeah.
Okay.
It's because of the For You page. You get all the old tweets now.
Yeah, I hate that. I hate that.
I'll have an article on the Canucks, I believe, publishing
the
either
Canucks?
Friday or Saturday on the Canucks on Friday or Saturday, basically talking about this, basically how they needed to rebuild. They refused to. They still don't seem to get it. So that'll come out in a few days. But their situation, they're going to play themselves into the worst case scenario. It looks like, where they're not going to land like a top 5 pick, but they're also going nowhere too.
Yeah, because they also have a really easy schedule from here on out. Like I know Boudreau also said that in his closing statement that their next 3 games were Chicago, Seattle, and I think it was Columbus. So if they go on a run and then miss the playoffs, like it's the worst possible scenario. But, it's what Aquilini wants, I guess.
GMs are going to do what GMs are going to do, right?
Yeah.
So, well, Adam, we have taken up enough of your time. Thank you for coming on. It has been lovely to have you.
Yeah, of course. Happy to join anytime.
I'm glad that we had a good game to talk about and that it wasn't a blowout either way, because that would have been terribly uncomfortable. It's not so bad if it's a Leaf fan and we're talking about, a blowout, but if it's another...
You can always expect a Rangers-Leafs game to be good, like at least these past couple of years.
They're both good enough that it's good, right? That's the best part.
Exactly.
So, well, Adam, thank you for coming on tonight. It's been wonderful having you. Let us know if you ever want to come back again, and I hope that we can do a game over in the Eastern Conference Final together.
Fair enough.
Let's will that into existence. Let's will that. So if they make it to the Eastern Conference Final, you are now contractually bound by the internet to appear on Game Over Toronto.
Sounds about right.
Okay.
Accept it.
All right. Well, for Game Over Toronto, thank you for joining. My name is Lauren Williamson.
And my name is Armaan Pantiki.
And I'm Adam Herman.
This is Adam.
And where can they find you? Where you find your work?
You can find me on Twitter at Adam Z, as in zebra, Adam Z Herman. And then I'm on Bleacher Report, the hockey section, publishing, depending on the circumstances, once or twice per week. Plus, I'll do, probably a live deadline blog, where I evaluate every trade as they come in. And, like I said, the draft stuff, I'll release a top 32 or maybe even top 64 ranking by the summer. Plus live draft coverages. Plus, like I said, once or twice per week, I publish something over there. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate you coming on.
Yes, thank you for coming on. So
of course, happy to do so.
Well, thank you, and have a good night, everybody. I hope you stay warm. I hope that you stay nice and warm in your house, Adam, and I hope everybody's commute is good in the morning. Please stay safe and stay warm. Have a good night, everybody. Take care.
Game over! Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada Sportsbook.